There's Larry the Lemur in my black diamond quilt. So this quilt is the Black Diamonds quilt from Fat Quarter Shop. It comes in a kit and it comes with this little tool, which is the half rectangle trimmer. And that's how you make all of this quilt. So it makes it really easy because you're making these half rectangles here larger, and then you cut them out with that half rectangle triangle, and you use the lines on the half rectangle triangle and you line it up with your seams here in the middle, and it gives you a perfect rectangle. So this quilt goes together beautifully, and you get these beautiful star points and these diamonds. It just is stunning. This is a quilt kit at Fat Quarter Shop. I have the link down below. So if you'd like to look at their kit, the kit comes with fabrics from Create from Alli K. Those were not available when I got it. It's a gorgeous black and white quilt. I used as much black and white as I could. I used Tula Pink, and I used line work and Daydreamer and Tiny Beasts, and this background is Tula Pink, so I threw a little bit of color into mine. I am gonna walk you through today how I did this quilt. And like I said, it's not too hard to do. You cut out a bunch of rectangles, you sew them together, and I'll show you how to do that because that is a little bit different. And then you use your half rectangle trimmer to line up the seams and cut out what you need from there. And that's about it. And then you put together your stars, and you put together your diamonds, and then you put together your quilt, and it's so much fun, and it just turns out gorgeous. I love it. If you're new here, or if you're interested in this quilt kit, I've got the link below. I'd appreciate it if you would check that out. And I've got a link to the fabrics too, if you like the fabrics, but the quilt kit does come with fabrics. If the half rectangle triangle or half rectangle trimmer is available on its own, I will put a link to that also. I'm not sure at this point if it is going to be. The back is also Tula Pink. I think it's called Rainbow Hexies. I don't remember. But yeah, I've got a link to this down below too. And then I use that in the binding also. Whoops. But anyway, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, notification bell. I do these things on occasion. I do all kinds of stuff on this channel. I love Halloween, so you're gonna see a lot of that. But I got a Christmas quilt that I'm gonna be following along and doing. That's a little mystery thing. And I have box openings, so it's a lot of fun around here. So yeah, let's get started. To get started, we have to get all our pieces cut. First thing I want to do is go through the fabrics I'm using. This is a Tula Pink's, I think it's called Basics. It's her solid, and it's like a mint green color. That's my background. Then I got 13 fat quarters of Tula Pink's line work, and you cut 9 blocks out of each fat quarter. And then I used 6, I only used 11 of these out of the 13, and then I used 6 of the Tiny Beast fat quarters, and I cut 9 out of each of those. So we will have 150 of these rectangles right here, and we have 150 of the solid rectangles. These will be put together to create our diamonds using this half rectangle trimmer. And then I've got 60 of my 4.5 inch squares. This is the background. This is going to be used for these pieces in the blocks right here. And for these inner blocks right here, these squares, I got some charm packs of line work and Daydreamer. They're 5-inch blocks. Is that correct? Yes, 5-inch squares. I'm going to need 4.5-inch squares for all of these blocks right here. So I'm going to pick and choose what I want to use out of all of these charm squares here. So that's going to be towards the end. I've cut all my materials because there is a lot to cut. So I cut these background fabrics with the fabric 6 inches wide. So I cut it 6 inches wide, and then I cut that width by 4 inches, and I was able to get 10 of these per width of fabric cut. So it was easy to keep track of when I got to 150. So you need 17 fat quarters, and you cut 9 of the same size here with the, or not with the fabric. You cut the same size rectangle, and you need 9 from each fat quarter. So that was easy to keep track of. Also, you need 17 fat quarters, and you need 9 from each fat quarter. So the cutting's not too hard, it's just a lot of cutting. And then 60 of these also. So once we get all that cut, what we need to next do is mark our background pieces here on the diagonal. And we have 150 of these, so we're going to need 75 of them marked with this diagonal from bottom left to top right, and then 75 of this with top left to bottom right. So let's get that done first, because then what we're going to do is we're going to take our fabric, our fat quarter cuts, and we're going to put them together with the diagonal like this. We're going to sew 1/4 of an inch from this line right here on both sides. So then when we cut on this line, we get 2 rectangles. That will look like that. So that's our goal here. But before we can get there, we need to mark 75 of these and 75 of these. Another thing I'd like to say before you get started is, as you're cutting your background pieces, you're going to need 150. I would separate it into 2 piles of 75. That way you can keep track of these down here, because you need 75 of each. Or if you haven't done that, just grab 2 at a time, do one this way and one this way, and then you should have half of the, or you should have the amount you need of each. So that's 2 ways of doing it. Okay, so I'm done marking my 150 background rectangles. Half of them go from bottom left to top right, and half go from top left to bottom right. So now the next thing we want to do is pair these up with our fat quarter rectangles. So my fat quarter rectangles are set up where I've got all of the same fabric together. So what I'm going to want to do is somehow separate half and half between these. So I don't know, I've got 9 in each, so maybe do 5 and 4, and then 4 and 5. You know, you can really kind of do it any way you want, because it's all going to be random in the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the rest over here. So, you know, it's up to you. However you want to do it. You could just grab 4. Do the first 4 you sew on these, and then the next 5 you sew on these. I'm going to do 1 pile at a time, so I'm going to just separate these out. So I'm going to push these off to the side because I won't need those for a while. So I've got my 2 piles. I'm just going to do this. And I'll put that aside, and I'm going to work with this pile first. What you want to do is you want to grab one of your fat quarters here and put it up so that the 4-inch width is facing you. And we want to put this on diagonal so that this corner and this corner match up. So yeah, it's going to look weird. So what I'm going to do, since this is, if you use pins it might be easier. I don't use pins, I use clips. So I'm clipping the bottom here so I can keep that in place. And I can kind of rotate this to make sure it matches up with this corner. Now what we're going to do from here is we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from this line right here on both sides of the line. So you'll go to your machine. I use my 1/4 inch foot. I put my 1/4 inch right here on the line and I sew, and that gives me a seam that's 1/4 of an inch away. Turn it over, do the same thing on the other side. So then we will come back and cut on this line and we'll have 2 half rectangle. So let's get started sewing all these. I'm going to chain sew these. So I'm going to get them done at the same time. And then when we're done, we can start using our little half rectangle trimmer. Okay, so I've got my my 1/4 inch foot in. It's got a little lip right here that you can butt your fabric up against, but it also lets me run this lip along my line here so that when we're sewing, you can see that my needle is going to come down 1/4 of an inch away from this line right here. So let's sew this first side. Now we can turn it over. You can see that the seam is 1/4 of an inch away. We're going to turn it over and do the other side. And there we go. We've got our 2 seams 1/4 of an inch away from that middle line, from corner to corner. So now I'm just going to do that 74 more times. Okay, so we have our first 75 rectangles put together, sewn 1/4 of an inch from the line on both sides. And now what we want to do is cut them in half, basically. I'm going to cut right on that line. Pull it apart, now you have 2. And then we're going to go over when I get done, and we'll be ironing towards the background. So let's get going on all of these cuts. This is just the first half. I still have these to do. So we got all our pieces cut in half. So now I have 150 of these to iron open, and we are ironing towards the background piece. So let's get started on this. So when you're doing this, don't let this be an issue right here if these don't match. It's It's not going to matter when we start trimming. Okay, now that we have all our pieces ironed, and I ironed them all towards the background, it is time to use our half rectangle trimmer by Fat Quarter Shop. And this will take one of these pieces and cut them into two unfinished rectangles. Unfinished 2.5 by 4.5, finished it'll be 2 by 4. It says the cut fabric sizes listed on this template yield 2 matching half rectangle triangle units. So you will end up with one of these. And the way this works, it's pretty easy and it's pretty cool because whenever I've made like half square triangle blocks or even like these rectangle blocks, it's hard to get it square. You're working with the bias, you're ironing, and you end up with kind of wonky, and you can trim it up, but this is going to give you just this perfect rectangle with your 1/4 inch seams figured in right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take one of these diagonal lines, and you have to find the one you can use, because if you try to use this one, it's not going to work. So on this one, we have to use this line right here. We're basically going to center it. We're going to line this diagonal line up with our seam. And it looks a little cockeyed, but it's going to come out perfect. And all we're going to do at this point is trim. And then when you're done, you can flip it and you can line up your edges and this line on your seam, and you'll get that perfect half rectangle square. Rectangle, half rectangle. I guess that's what it's called, half rectangle. See? Beautiful. And that's how you end up with these beautiful half rectangle units. And so we're just going to finish up all of these the same way. We finished our first 75 half rectangles, and we did the seam so it goes from the top left to the bottom right. Now we have 74 more of our fat color cuts and 75 of our background cuts, and now we're going to put the seam from the top right to the bottom left. Going to do the exact same thing we did, so 1/4 inch on each side of this line, and then we're going to trim down the line and we're going to iron towards the background. So that's all exactly the same. The only difference is you have to remember you're putting your seam or your diagonal line from bottom left to top right so that we get opposite of these. So I'm going to finish these up and we'll come back when I'm done. Start using our little half rectangle trimmer. Okay, so these are the first half rectangles I've done, and you can see that this seam is going there from top left to bottom right. This seam's going from bottom right to top left. Even if you flip it, it's going to stay the same. So we've got two opposite seams going on. These have been trimmed. Now I need to use my half rectangle trimmer. Let's get a piece of paper. A half rectangle trimmer to trim all of these up. And there is 2 lines on this because only one line's gonna work. So you can do both seams. The other seam was on this line, this seam's on this line. And just like before, we'll cut it out of that center, and you also have a little bit of leeway here to kind of fussy cut what you see inside. Like I have a panda in there. I would have gotten him anyway, but you could like move it up and down here a little bit to grab that little fussy cut if you want it. There we go. A little half square triangle or half rectangle trimmer. Just have all of these to do, and they're gonna end up exactly like this. We're just gonna have the seam going the other way. Okay, we finished our half rectangles. I have 150 that go from top left to bottom right, and I have 150 that go from bottom left to top right, so that they can, you know, go together like this, or they can go together like this. So what we need to do is we need to make 60 that go together like this, where that background fabric is sewn together. Then we need to make 90 that go together like this to make a potential diamond. So I think what I'm gonna do, instead of trying to lay all my, and I've got my favorite charm packs or charm squares picked out, which I need to trim down to the right size, same size as that. And then these are the corner squares. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix these piles together in their own piles and make the 60 where the background goes together just by randomly pulling out, and then make 90 of these by randomly pulling them out. The only thing I might not do is put 2 fabrics of the same thing together, so if I pick 2 of the same, I'll pick another one, but for the most part I think I'm just going to go random, see what happens. So let's start with our 60 here. And I'm going to take a minute to get these all mixed up. I have what looks like a mess here, but it's an organized mess. I have Unit A, Unit B, or Unit 1, Unit 2, whatever you want to call them, where the seams are the opposite, and I'm going to just pick in here from the middle, and if I don't pull the same fabrics, I'm putting them together. So what I got these 2. So these 2 are going to be put together like this, and I'm going to do that for 60 of these. I think another thing I'm going to do, since this is all random to me, I think what I'll do is I'll pull out 10 sets so that I can keep track of how many I'm making, because I'm going to chain piece these. So this is set 1. Let's go in here and pull out 2 more. This is set 2. And 10. So I'll do 6 sets of 10 so I can get my 60 of all of these here. So I am going to put these together like this. Match those seams. Just kind of match these seams right here. And pin the side you're going to sew. I'm going to pin that seam so it stays together. We're going to pin a quarter of an, or not pin, we're going to sew a quarter of an inch. And when we get done with all 60 of these, we are going to iron the seams open. So here's my first set of 10. So I'm going to get those sewn. Okay, it looks like I have a mess here, but I really don't. I have my unit 2 or B's pile here in a random order. Unit 1 or A's are over here in a random order. And then these are my 6 piles of 10 that I chain pieced together so that I could make sure I had 60. So I basically just want to separate these, and we want to iron our seams open. Okay, once we have them separated, we are going to iron that seam open, and we will have our, at the end we'll have our 60 units that will go into our block. And these are the ones where the background is sewn together. So that's what our 60 are going to look like. Okay, so there's my first 10 of these units where the background is sewn together. So I'm going to finish the other 50 I have to do, and we'll come back and look at them. But these are turning out really nice. These half square rectangles are just the perfect size. They're going together great. So the trimmer is just a great way to get these nice quote-unquote square pieces. Oh, look at that little lemur. That little lemur and the little squirrel together. It's so cute. We finished our 60 star point units. And just a reminder, that's what's going in these blocks right here. So they went together very easily. Ironed them open, and they're just all kind of randomly put together. And they look really pretty. And when I put them on the blocks, I will randomly pull them out also. So those are done. Those 60 star point units are done. So I'm going to set those aside. Now we have 90. Now we have 90 of the partial diamond units that we're going to put together. I'm going to do the same thing, pull them out randomly, put them together, except this time, let's go ahead and grab 2 randoms. They're going to go together like this. So I will have 90 of these in the end. And that will take up the rest of my pieces also. So I can just start pulling until I'm done. Have 90 of these, iron these open, and we'll be good to go. We can start putting blocks together. So I will put these together, basically with the colors together, and pin the side I want to sew. Match up those seams here. So I've been pinning down below where those seams are and then starting sewing up here and sewing to my pin. But I don't need to group these at all because, like I said, there's going to be 90 of them left. So I'm just going to put them all together and we'll get this partial diamond unit and iron them open. Okay, I got all 90 of my partial diamond units completed. All that's left now is to iron these seams open. So that's what we'll do, and we will have all our pieces ready to start assembling our quilt blocks. So there's one partial diamond. Let's grab another one. And just a quick preview of how these will be going together. So these will go together like that. So I'm going to finish up ironing all of these seams open. Alright, so here we are. We finished our star points, which you can see are these right here. And we finished our partial diamond pieces, which are going to go together like this. But I've already started here. I wanted to show you, I wanted to get started, see how these go together. You had 60 of the star points, you have 90 of the partial diamonds, and they were all made with this half rectangle trimmer. And one thing I really liked about this half rectangle trimmer is that you made a larger piece and then you cut it out from that larger piece so you get a nice square piece of, or a nice rectangular piece of fabric. So when you put them together, they fit perfectly. I've got these nice square units here. So the other thing I like is that it's clear and it has a seam allowance here, which allowed me to have a little bit of room to fussy cut. Because you can put it on your seam here and you can move it up and down, and you can make sure you can see where your seam allowance is going to be and see where your little picture is on the inside of it. So I like that about it too. But anyway, here's all my pieces to get started. I haven't done any diamond units yet, but I am starting these star units. I think I've got 9 done and there's 15. But what we're going to do is these 4.5 inch squares I cut out of my charm packs are going to go in the center, and then my star units are going to go around it like this so that the background is pointing at this middle piece. And then I've got my squares here that go in the corner. So let's put one together. Let's start with this one. And these are pretty random, so I've kind of been just randomly using these. Sometimes if I pull out a same fabric, I'll pull out another one, but I haven't had much of an issue there. So just grab one, and we're going to make sure the background's pointing. This one's got the same fabric, so I'll just grab this one. And then this one, and this one. Who knows, maybe at the end I'll end up with a bunch of the same fabric in the last one, but it's, you know what, as I say this in every video, it's still gonna be beautiful. I am in love with these colors. I love Tula Pink. I love the colors that are in this. I love that her little tiny beasts are coming out in this. This one, it's hard to see. This one does not have it, but there is a fox in that print. There's a lemur in this print. There's going to be peacocks in that print, zebras, a deer. So right there is how our block is going to be put together. So when we put this together, we're going to sew it by rows. It's a 9 patch. We're going to sew it by rows. And we will always be ironing towards the solid patches. So this way, here, and then towards the middle solid patch. So you just want to get started putting these together. Pin the side you're going to sew. And then iron towards the solid patch. And I'm going to construct all my rows that way, and then we'll put the block together. Remember to pin the side you're going to sew, so you don't get confused and sew the wrong side, which I had that right, but I was afraid that I didn't. So when I pick this up, I know I'm going to sew this side. So 1/4 inch iron towards the solid patches. Okay, so I've got these sewn, and I always put them back because you can just lay them, you can just grab them and put them in the wrong spot. So I like to lay them back and just make sure I'm keeping everything in the same spot. Even though you're doing this, it just really does help when you can get it put back wrong to keep it in the right spot. So we're going to add these and iron towards the solid patch. Okay, get these laid out again. Make sure the background's always pointing towards that center. And by laying it out in the step before also, it's like I kind of remembered that the deer I had was on top here. So it's just good practice. So now that we have our rows together, we are gonna put our rows together, I guess. And we are gonna match these seams right here, and they're in opposite directions, so they'll be nested. And then we are going to iron towards the center row. And then our block is done. There we go, I got my block together, got all my background points going towards the center. And I ironed these top and bottom rows towards the center row right here. So there you go, that's how these blocks go together. And they're so pretty. Got my little skunk in there. Look at that little squirrel peeking. That's so cute. I love Tula Pink fabrics. There's Larry the Lemur right there. Larry the Lemur. He's down there too. But yeah, so you're gonna have 15 of these to make, of these stars. So I've got quite a few of these done. I've got a few more to do. But for now, I want to move on to the diamonds. So the diamonds are just going to utilize this pile. And I want to be random with these two. So we'll just grab 6 of these. Because 6 of these are going to make up a block. And all we're going to do here is put these together on the seam, which these seams, if you remember, we ironed open. So just line that seam up the best you can right here. Pin it. This one's pretty obvious which side you're gonna sew. And we'll do all 3 of these because there's going to be 3 in a block. So line up that seam, sew 1/4 inch, and then we're going to iron these seams open. Okay, there's my 3 diamonds put together, matched at the center seam. Sewn 1/4 inch and then ironed open. So now we're going to make a block out of this by putting them together at the center seam we just sewed. Match that seam up. We're going to sew 1/4 inch. Remember to always pin the side you're going to sew. And these are going to be ironed open also. So, put your center seams together, match your edges, sew at 1/4 inch, and iron open. And these are going to be ironed open also. So, put your center seams together, match your edges, sew at 1/4 inch, and iron open. Okay, I got these 2 together and they are ironed open. So let's do this. Let's put this one together like this, match up that center seam, pin your edges, sew at 1/4 inch, and iron open. And there is our diamond block. That is exactly how it's going to go together, and it's going to look, and I know it's not the same size as the star block, but we're basically going to put it together in vertical rows where you got star, diamond, star, and then you're going to put those vertical rows together, but the seams here won't match in these vertical rows, so it's going to look pretty cool. So I'm going to put one more together, and then I've got 15 of these to do also, and I am just going to open this up and grab 6. So there's 6 fairly random pieces. And let's do this. And oops, I don't want to put the same fabric together. So there. I'm going to put all of these together, matching the center seam, sewing 1/4 inch and ironing open. There's my 3 put together, ironed open, and now we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to put them together at that center seam we just did, matching those seams, sewing at 1/4 inch and ironing open. All right, we got 2 of these done. 2 of our diamond block done. So these aren't hard to put together at all. Once you have all of these pieces, and then you got to make a decision how you want to put it together. I'm putting it together randomly, and that's about it. Make sure you match your seams here in the middle and here on the sides. There's a lot of material going on right here, so you just got to be mindful of that. Other than that, it's pretty easy. So I've got 15 of these to do also. So I'm going to finish out my 2 sets of blocks, and then we'll come back and we will put this quilt together. But we put it together by rows. Look at that. 15 stars, 15 diamonds. We are ready to put this quilt top together. So we're going to put it together in vertical rows. There's going to be 6 blocks in each row. 3 of the blocks are going to start with stars, and 2 are going to start with diamonds, and then we're just going to alternate on the way down. Then we put our rows together and iron them open. So it doesn't show on here which way to iron between the blocks, but I would assume open. So we can get started. We'll start with this, and we can start with this, a star and then a diamond, and then alternate 6 blocks that way. So there will be 3 stars, 3 diamonds in each row, but it just depends on how the row starts. So this row, 3 of the rows will start with the star, 3 will start with the diamond. Oh, and it looks like there's matching seams here. So we'll put it together. Let's start with a star, go to a diamond, match these seams up. They are both ironed open, so you'll have to kind of watch what you're doing here. Make sure your seam stays together. Go to this one. Make sure this seam lines up. And then the center seam also. And then we're going to sew these together, and I am going to iron these open because I didn't see in the pattern how to iron them. Let's get these sewn together. Real quick, I forgot to mention that if, I have a directional fabric in the center. If you have a directional fabric, make sure when you put your blocks together that all your directional fabric is going the same way. Okay, I got my first 3 rows done where I started with my star and then did star, diamond, with 6 blocks until I got my row. And now I'm going to do the diamond, star, diamond. And the reason I'm doing them separately is because my middle fabric is directional. And I just want to make sure I get my fabrics in all my middle fabrics going the same way. So I've got the 3 that start with a star, and now I'm going to do 2 that start with the diamond. So it's going to be exactly the same, except the diamond is going to go first. So 2 rows starting with a diamond, alternating with 6 blocks in each row. So I have 6 of these left, and I have 6 of those left. So we will get 2 rows out of these. And again, same thing. Match up these seams right here. And this center seam. So 1/4 inch, and I have actually been ironing towards the star block. I decided to iron towards the star block. And then when I do have seams, the couple seams that match, they will alternate. So I'm going to start doing my 2 rows, starting with the diamond and alternating for 6 blocks. Okay, got all my rows done. I've got 2 that start with diamonds, and I kept my center pieces here directional, which was the goal. So now we will put together a row that starts with a star, then a diamond, then a star, then a diamond, then a star. So we have 5 rows. So what we can do is put a star on the left side of each of these, and we'll have 4 rows, and then we can add our last star unit. So let me got a lot of fabric here. Let me get that out of the way. We want 1 star unit. On the left-hand side of a diamond row. So it will go together like this. And here's where we have matching seams. And then we've got some points that match also. Oh, we have points up here that match. So we're just going to put these together, matching all these points, and then fillet it in between. So I'm going to start up here, and it's going to take a while, but match your points up. And then we'll come down and we will, after we get all our points matched up, I'll start filling in between all those points. So there we go. Got our 2 rows put together. And I didn't put this one in here. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Look out, neighbors. Come here. Oh, look out. I got to show them stuff. Yep, come on. Oh, good boy. Good boy. Okay. I've got these 2 rows put together. I'm going to do the exact same thing with a star row on the left, a diamond row on the right, put them together, and then I'll have both units done. Then we can put those 2 units together and then add the final star row onto the end. And it says to iron these seams open, so we'll give that a shot. So here we go. You saw me putting the rows together, and now I've got the whole quilt together. It wasn't that hard. It was a little too big to do on my little sewing table to show you, but we just put the rows together where, you know, you start with a star on 3 of them at the top and diamonds on 2 of them, and then work your way down, and you've got these alternating blocks here. So it looks really cool. That turned out really nice. So I appreciate you watching this video. Let me know what you think. What colors would you use? Do you think you'd use black and white? Or would you go with colors like I did? So I'd love to hear from you, and hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and you'll get notified every time I do a new video and a quilt along or a box opening. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you watching my video.